Hey everyone, my name is Sundeep and I work here at Connected. I'm an iOS engineer and lately I've been working on a project that is pretty big. It has about 120,000 lines of code. It's made up of 20 frameworks and there's been over 80 developers contributing to the overall project. And it has been bringing to light an issue um, that we've started to call context erosion. But what is context erosion? Well, no one should know because I just made that name up. But let's forget about code for a moment, actually, and I'll tell you a little story. So my wife and I have been watching Breaking Bad. We actually just finished it a few months ago. I know it's kind of old, but if you know the show, it's really great. I recommend it. And there's a character in the show. His name is Walter White. He's a star of the show. He's a total badass. He's really awesome. Like character-wise, acting-wise. And I wanted to dress up as Walter White for Halloween. So I woke up early. Yeah, I got that too. That's right. I woke up early and I woke my wife up early. I asked her to put a bunch of makeup on me, give me a black eye, some bruises. I put a bloody Band-Aid on and I got this hat and all that. So that's my Walter White. And then my kids, they're 5 and 6, they woke up afterwards, came into the room and they kind of freaked out. They thought I was actually hurt. They came up to me and they were scared and worried, asking why I was hurt, what happened, did someone beat me up? So you can see they didn't have context. They didn't know why this was like this. And that's what context erosion is. It's the idea that the end result moves further and further away from the original reason of why it is like that. So for my kids, it wasn't a big deal. I could just kind of reassure them that I was actually okay, that this is just makeup, and this is a costume for Halloween. It was from this TV show, etc. But for engineers, it's a big issue. It could be a big drain on resources. It could, have quality issues in the code or in the product, and it could be a morale. It could lower morale. And I've seen this firsthand. So let's come back to code for a minute now. There's a teammate, and he was telling me about a flow in the app that he was working on. It was a payment flow, and the payment flow had to happen in a web view, a website. So in the app right now was an SF Safari view controller, and if you've used that controller before, at the bottom of it is a Safari button, and if you tap that button, it'll actually bounce you out of the app into the Safari app. And that actually caused the payment flow to not work. So they didn't want that. And he had also discovered that at some point in the past that there was a web view, like a normal WK web view. And so at some point a developer swapped it. So I asked why was it swapped, and he didn't know. He checked the Git history and everything. He couldn't find it. He checked the Jira ticket, couldn't find any clues. And the developer who did the swap wasn't here anymore. So at that point, the context had totally eroded, and it didn't seem like there was any way to recover it. So as you can see, so he spent a lot of time just digging, and then he also spent a lot of time, he actually went back, swapped it back to the web view, and did a whole bunch of testing because he was a little paranoid that something might be wrong. He wanted to make sure that he flushed out any potential issues, and he didn't find any. So he just kind of left it in there, but he still doesn't really know if it's totally okay. So as you can see, it can be an issue. So now that we know a little bit about what context erosion is, I have 3 tips to help reduce it. So the first tip, this might seem pretty obvious, but put context into the tickets. So whatever software you're using, whoever's writing those tickets, it's nice if there's context. Why are we doing this kind of work? and link to other pieces of context, artifacts, whatever you can do to help motivate the story. And the nice thing is that it serves as future reference, but it also, when the developer picks the ticket up, they can kind of dive into it a lot quicker. Next thing is leverage source control. So things like Git, amazing at recording code changes. It's a tool that we use all the time. There's a lot of tooling and infrastructure around it. So it's great for code. We can use that for context as well to record it. So here's a screenshot. So this is sometimes I see this, maybe you've seen it too, where there's a commit and it tells you what work has been done in the commit. Great. But sometimes you want to know more than that. You want to know why the work was done or why a certain decision was made or a certain architecture or a certain technique was used instead of something else. And that's kind of like the story behind the code. The code diff can't tell you that. You need to ask the person or they need to tell you somehow. So the tip is, add context to the Git description. So the message, nice and short, but the description, you can add in all sorts of context, links, whatever you need to help explain things to future readers. So speaking of source control, I'm assuming that a lot of people probably use things like GitHub or Bitbucket, like some kind of SaaS product that helps deal with your project and sources like stores your code. So this is something I also see that's quite common. So this is a pull request, and someone's reviewing the pull request, reviewing the code, and they ask a question, why, right? So they're looking for context, and the author, provides a really great answer, and this is great. But I think the main problem here is that the code itself doesn't have the context needed for the reader, and it's great that they have it in the PR comment like this, but they could just add it actually also to the code as well. So the tip is, and this is the tip, I try to do this, but whatever the answer is, take that and try to put that in the code somehow, either through naming functions if possible, but if you can't, just add a little comment explaining why, so that the next time someone goes into this code a year later, they don't have to go through the Git history, find this PR somehow, look at the PR comments, and find this particular comment. That might be really hard to do later on. And the third tip is enforce merge commits. So if you're using something like GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab, you can enforce that your pull requests get merged with a merge commit. And this is nice because you get a commit message that looks like that. And notice it has the PR number right in there, and it also has a link. And this makes it easy for developers to find PRs for code that has been changed, so they can blame the code and just find the PR, because the PR itself will have a lot of context, because people can write things in the PR description and there's discussion around it. Yeah, so that's context erosion, and it's a problem. It's software, especially in big projects. I don't know if you've experienced it, but by putting a name around it, and the name is probably a work in progress. That was the best I can come up with, but and kind of shining a light on it has helped the team be more cognizant of it, be more aware, and come up with techniques and tactics to try to battle it and reduce it. At home, however, I think the next time I dress up for Halloween, I'm going to show my kids an episode maybe or two of Breaking Bad. And, well, maybe not. They're 5 and 6, so maybe a show about drugs may not be the best thing. But for developers, context is really important. And that's it. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Hi. Sorry, maybe I missed it, but what was the other two tips? You said there were three. You
Oh
just
yeah.
said pretty much we just commit, right?
Yeah, let me actually rewind a little bit here. So yeah, I didn't really do enumerate them very well, did I? Okay, so the first one was in your tickets, like your project management software, put context there, put context into your source control. So you're when you make a commit, either have code comments or in your Git description, your commit description. I guess this is a also I kind of grouped them together, but this is another tip to like if you have a code review thing, um, instead of just replying here, reply here, but then also in your code, add it there as well. And then enforce merge commits on your PRs.
What are your thoughts on documentation? Are there places where you want to use documentation and places where you don't?
Documentation, yeah. I mean, it's great. I think the more the better. But I think every project I've been on, we try to have documentation. But over the course of time, and then the team kind of the members on the team churn, like people come in and go out. I find that the documentation becomes less useful, and it's really hard to maintain. So I don't know. Maybe we just haven't been doing it the right way. But I found it to be good at first, and it's good for like onboarding new team members. But eventually, I don't know, it becomes less useful. I've yet to hope maybe people have had better experiences, but I haven't had the greatest with documentation yet. But I think it's useful. You have like a big diagram or something, you know, if you can maintain that, that's really helpful to show like architecture and stuff like that. Does that help?
So I just one other thing that really helps that I found in my workplace is PR templates. So you can have a preset template. So that encourages people to add more information, more relevant information. So if you're already linking to the PR in your merge commit, and then you also have an explanation around what this PR is changing, that can help as well. And also relevant PR titles so that they're more searchable when you're searching in GitHub or whatever. So the one question I did have was, who writes your Jira tickets normally?
Yeah, so on this project, it was, I would say, multiple people were in writing Jira tickets. So definitely the product owners were in there. And then usually lead developer would be in there. And then sometimes QA and design would be in there depending on what the ticket was about. So it was like somewhat collaborative.
And do you link back to, do you connect Jira and GitHub?
Yeah, yes, there's an integration there. So yeah, that's right. So what he's referring to is like if you push a commit up to GitHub and you put the ticket number in the commit message, Jira will actually, there'll be a webhook sent and Jira will know that there's a branch for that ticket or a PR for that ticket, and it'll show it in the GR UI.
Yeah, I find that also really helps improve tracking, basically.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, Sundeep. For documentation, like there's like two types of documentation, right? There's like the code documentation, like that's close to the code and you're like adding, like documenting the class and structs and stuff. But there's also like maybe the one that you're talking about, which is like docs that live elsewhere, like on the wiki, like some sort of wiki article or like, sorry, like an internal wiki, and like, or maybe like in a GitHub README or something, right? So like, were you talking about like the wiki type of documentation, which could get outdated if it's not updated with the code?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Yeah, totally. I was thinking about external kind of documentation, like in a wiki. To your question, so yeah, I would think that documentation in code, like API reference and stuff like that, I think that is pretty easy to maintain and it's super helpful. So yeah, I think that's great. Like if you can do that, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and then I had one more comment about like for commit messages. I think what also helps is if you commit frequently. So like, let's say you added like a whole bunch of code, you can't possibly describe like every single thing you added. So if you like broke down your commits into smaller chunks, you'll like the blame would actually be more useful as well.
Thanks. That's a great tip.